Who's got two thumbs and didn't bring a change of clothes? This guy. Man, that was powerful. I hope it was powerful for you guys too. But man, if you get the chance and you see Chip Anthony, he's our director of operations. He put in so much work with his team to make this happen. I know it seems like, man, it was just this 15-minute thing where we got to see God's glory, but there were a lot of things going on in the background. And so if you see him, please tell him thank you, because that was... And now you guys have the gift of seeing what a message looks like after the pastor ugly cried for 10 minutes. So here we are. When I was 20 years old, I got my first car. It was a 99 silver two-door manual Ford Escort. Terrible car. Even when it was brand new, it was not a good car, so you can just imagine how it was doing 11 years into its lifespan, but it was cheap, and therefore it was mine. I bought it from this guy out of his driveway, and I had this plan. I was like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna see what this bad boy can do. So I was gonna take it from this guy's driveway, and I was gonna drive it to Orlando, which was about 3.5 hours away from where I lived. And I made it about 3 hours into the journey before my car started slowing down. You might be like, Josh, that makes sense. You were on I-4. There was probably traffic. That wasn't it. Oh, maybe you needed a rest stop, or you needed some food or some gas. That wasn't it. I'm saying the maximum speed of my vehicle went from 75 to 61 to 42 to 17 to broken down on the side of the road. The interesting thing, though, was if I just waited 15 to 30 minutes, it would be rested up and good to go for a few more miles. That made the 3-hour journey home a 2.5-day journey that finished the last 100 miles being towed by a tow truck. Mechanics looked at my car. They were like, all right, we're going to figure out what's going on. So they replaced the fuel pump, and they looked at the radiator, and they did all the things they knew to do, and they never figured out what was wrong with my vehicle. But I knew. She'd just get tired. She'd just get to the point where she's like, man, I just don't have any more in me. And she was done. You ever get tired? You ever get to the point where you're like, man, I've had enough. Like, I've got no more to give, no more time, energy, nothing. I've got nothing. And you're left there doing what I did with my Ford Escort, where you're like, okay, well, I'll just keep pressing down on the pedal, hoping it goes faster. So you press down and you press down until you break down. Are you tired? Have you had enough? You're not alone. Like even as I was working on this message over the last 2 weeks, I was like, God, I'm just so stinking tired. I'm exhausted. This is exhausting. I've had enough. And the question is, when you get to that point, because listen, life is going to be exhausting. This is not a message of being anti-tired. This is like, hey, like we're going to get tired. Following Jesus at times is tiresome. If you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. It's okay to be tired. The question is, when you are tired, where do you go? How do you find your rest? If you have your Bibles, I want to invite you to open up to 1 Kings 19 as we unpack this very idea. While you get there, if you don't know me, I'm Josh. I'm the lead pastor here at 180 Life Church. And we are in a series where we're kind of going to battle a little bit. We're going to battle against this idea of hurry, where it's not just busyness in our schedules, but that it actually has a gravitational pull on our hearts that pulls us into hurry, where we are rushing around and so busy doing that we forget who we are meant to be doing it with. Are you tired? We're doing battle today against hurry. And where we are in 1 Kings 19, this guy named Elijah, he is a prophet. He has had audible conversations with God. He has rebuked kings. He has called out false gods. He has identified and led to their death false prophets. He has kind of done a lot of work for the kingdom. He's called fire down from heaven. He's been getting after it. And where we pick up in verse 1, this guy named Elijah is a little bit tired. Check it out. It says, now Ahab, that's the king, told Jezebel, his queen, everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. That's the false prophets I was talking about. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, may the gods deal with me. That's an indicator, right? She is not a follower of the one true God. She's following the gods. She says, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them. She goes, I'm gonna kill you. She's like, I'm coming. This is an Old Testament text message where she's like, hey, I don't want to just kill you in 24 hours. I want you to know I'm coming. She goes, I want to steal your joy, your peace. I want to get all of that for myself because I want to mess you up, Elijah. She's a little angry. Verse 3 is Elijah's response. It says Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. This gives me some comfort. This guy who had audible conversations with God at times still was afraid. He was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord. He said, take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. I've had enough. I tap out. I'm over it. I cannot go any longer. Lord, take my life. I am done. When I read this chapter for the first time, I'll never forget where I was. I was in Miami. I was training with my unit in the Army. We were doing this field training exercise. We were in this big warehouse. It was the morning, and I was reading this. And the reason that I remember reading this so clearly is because I was in a season with my wife where we were really struggling. And we weren't struggling maritally, although that does happen. You can just ask her. We were struggling because this was a 6-month span where her autoimmune disease, she was on a medication that truly was just kind of kicking her butt. It was a chemotherapy drug, and what it led to was over 6 months, she was sick the entire time. She was a shell of herself. She had no energy. She had nothing to offer, nothing to give. She was just doing the best she could. And there was this phrase that she kept saying, and honestly, up until this point, I didn't know how to respond to it, but it was a phrase that she kept praying, and it went like this: I have had enough, Lord. And so I read this, and I was just like, God, did you write this in here for me? Because that's exactly what we keep saying. I've had enough. I'm done. I'm tired. I called her and I said, hey, you got to read this chapter. You got to check it out. I'm not even going to tell you what it's about. Just read it, debrief it, have your quiet time, and then we're going to talk about it. Call me right back. And so she did. Why? Because we were tired. We were done. We had given all we had to give, and we had reached this point where we're like, God, I don't even know what I have left to offer. And Elijah's at the point where he's like, hey, Lord, just take my life. I'm done. And I just want to stop there because I know that some of you, maybe that's a part of your story, where you've even gotten to the point where you're like, Lord, take my life. And if that was your story, or maybe it's your story right now, I just want you to know, Elijah's story gets better. God is doing a work there, and we want to be a community where if that's where you are or where you've been and you're struggling still, we want to be a community that rallies around you. Let us know. We want to partner with you because I truly believe your story gets better. It's not done yet. God has work to do. It continues in verse 5. It says, then he, being Elijah, laid down under the bush and fell asleep. Elijah says these words. He's like, man, I have had it. I'm at the end of my rope. I'm done. I'm tired. And what he does is he lays down under this 6 to 8 foot bush tree, which grows in the desert, provides a little bit of shade. And he lays down and he goes to sleep. And I love this because when I get tired, I get busy. See, when I get tired, I feel like I'm failing in my job, failing at home, failing as a husband, failing in relationships, just failing in general. And if I'm failing, I do what I do with the Ford Escort. I press down harder on the pedal. And I go and I go and I go until I break down on the side of the road. And Elijah, he doesn't have that problem. He's like, Lord, I'm done. I've got nothing left to give. I am tired. And he goes to sleep. Are you tired? Have you had enough? Because we keep pushing and pushing and doing until we become these spiritual zombies, we're getting stuff done, even Jesus-y things done, right? We're getting the work done at the same time. Where's the hope? Where's the peace? Where's the joy? Where's the love? Where is the resurrected life that Jesus promised us? Jesus did not bring us back to life to be spiritual zombies. Elijah, he has hit his limit. He's like, man, I've had enough. I'm over it. I'm done. And we say, but I can't. I've got so much to do. I've got to do all these things, important things, mind you. Y'all, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on others. But God needs me. God doesn't need you. God doesn't need anybody. God doesn't need anything. He loves you. He pursues you. He desires you, but he doesn't need you. He wouldn't be God if he did. In fact, he made you in a way that you would need rest. God, it's almost like he had this all planned out from the beginning. Verse 5, check it out, because this unpacks this idea of our need for rest a little bit more. It says, verse 5 continues, all at once an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. God literally sent him an angel to show up, make him bread, and give him water so that he would have enough energy to go back to sleep. He needed rest. And this is God's immediate response to, I've had enough. Like he says, I'm done, I'm over it, I can't do anymore, take my life, Lord. And God's response isn't what we would think. Like God didn't go, you know what, you're selfish, get it together. God didn't say, don't you realize how much work there is to do? God's response wasn't like look at you, you're not doing half of what I'm doing. God doesn't compare. God doesn't say what we say sometimes in church when people get tired and they get burned out. We say, well, listen, you just got to trust. Like, you got to have a little more faith. That wasn't God's response. God knew that he was tired. It's not something that he's surprised about. Like God doesn't find out that we're tired and he goes, man, I got to be honest, I didn't see this coming. No, he knows. God knows you're tired, and when you're tired, he gives us a place to go. The question is far less about what do I do when I'm tired? It's more about where do I go? How can I find rest? See, I want to be clear. Being tired is not shameful. We feel shame when we get tired, but that's not actually what it's designed to be. It's actually meant to be something a little different, because being a disciple is not about avoidance of becoming tired. It's about knowing where to go when you are. It's about us figuring out, okay, so what is the solution to the tired problem? And it's not doing Jesus' work. Like, he gives us commands. The baptisms that happened here, it's not just Chip. Like, there were a lot of people rallying around these disciples as they were being raised up, making decisions for the King and growing in their maturity, and then deciding to be baptized. There is a lot of work to be done. If you look outside in Greater Hartford, you're not naive to it. You see it. There's a lot of work to be done. This isn't about not being tired. It's about knowing where to go when you are. And Jesus gives us the answer in Matthew 11. He says this. He says, come to me, who? You who have your Bible degrees. No, that's not it. You who work really hard all the time. No, that's not it. You who check all the boxes. No, you who don't sin anymore. No. Come to me, who? All who are weary and burdened, and I will do what? Give you rest. He says, come to me, but I'm tired, Lord. I know. Come to me. But God, I don't have anything else to offer you. You never did. I know. Come to me. He gives us the command. He says, come to. And it feels counterintuitive, doesn't it? Like I get tired, and I get so tired that I barely have enough energy to stand up out of my couch, which is just enough energy to sit back down. And God says, no. Like, I know you're tired, and so I'm going to send you somewhere. Come to me. And a lot of times, I think that's the problem, is we allow ourselves to become that Ford Escort that's broken down on the side of the road without the energy to do what we actually need to do and go where we need to go. You ever feel that? There's this phenomenon that happens with babies. If you have a baby, you're living it, and I will pray for you. Pray for us too. But they get overtired. Have you heard of it? Like, it's this idea where, like, the baby maybe skipped a nap, or maybe they're just going a little bit too hard that day, because babies and boundaries, they don't really live within them. And so they went a little too hard, and what happens is they get so upset and distraught that they are so tired that they are too upset and distraught to close their eyes, calm down, so that they can fall asleep. And they get overtired. And we think that applies only to infants, and yet a lot of times we become these overtired Christians, where we just don't have the energy to go to the place that we really need to go, to do the things that God calls us to do and invites us into. We become so tired. Here's something we need to realize, though. The rest that I am talking about and the rest that Jesus is talking about here is not Sunday football. It's not board games with the family. It's not reading a good book. It's not watching your favorite movie. Now, it could involve every single one of those things, but that's not what it is. Jesus is talking about something a little bit more. We need to understand that there is a significant difference, because we get tired and I say, maybe you said it today, I need a break. But that's not what we're talking about. See, there is a difference between taking a break and finding rest. Because there's a difference between withdrawing from something and withdrawing to someone. Like a lot of times we get caught up and we pull from the surface when we should be pulling from the source. We say, I need to just unwind, and so we watch that TV show and we forget that that's not actually what fuels up your soul in the way that your body needs. Like that there's something better and something more that we should be pressing into. Jesus models this for us. We're actually going to be talking about it even more next week, but Jesus had this scenario show up where his cousin, John the Baptist, was executed. He found out about it, and his initial response was, I need to get alone with my dad. That was his response. And so he gets off of the boat. And as soon as he gets off of the boat, a crowd surrounds him. And it says that he looked on them with compassion. He saw that they needed taught, they needed healed, eventually they needed fed. He saw this, and his response wasn't, you guys are in my way. See, he wasn't withdrawing from people. He was withdrawing to the Father. So when it was interrupted, which is what we talked about last week, when it was interrupted, they weren't obstacles to him. See, a great test for me on how I am doing finding rest is how is my level of compassion? Like, am I loving the people around me, or are they just simply getting in my way? Are you tired? Do you need rest? Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. Jesus eventually did sneak away to the Father. After he fed the 5,000, that's where we get that story from. He feeds them, he disperses them. He tells the disciples, hey, get on the boat. I'm not going with you right now. And he goes to the side of the mountain to pray to his dad. Why? Because he was tired and he needed it. Are you tired? Have you had enough? He says, come to me, son. Come to me, daughter. I've got the answer that you need. And we say, God, but I'm so tired. And he says, I know. That's why I'm here. You want to know why I get so tired? It's because I get so caught up in doing all these things, all these Jesus-y things, mind you, important things. And I'm so busy running around that I forget that I'm supposed to be walking with Jesus. I'm so busy rushing around that I rush myself right out of the presence of God, that I am so busy doing that I forget that I'm actually needing to find true rest. Are you tired? Elijah, he gets a little bit of rest. He lays down under that broom bush. He gets some sleep. He eats some food, and he wakes back up. In verse 7, it says, the angel of the Lord came back as one of the coolest alarm clocks of all time and touched him and said, get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you. So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. Something we need to know, in the Old Testament, God, his presence operated a little bit different. Before the Holy Spirit indwelled us, God's Spirit would indwell places. So there were times where the Spirit of God indwelled the Ark of the Covenant. There were times where he indwelled the innermost parts of the temple. And there were times where he indwelled a mountain known as Horeb, which is also known as Mount Sinai, which is where Moses got his 10 Commandments. And so we see God indwelling this mountain, and we think this come to me statement is hard now. Right, we're coming to Jesus could be as simple as getting out of your couch and into the Word. It could be as simple as telling Alexa to play some worship music so you could give him some praise, or maybe sitting down and intentionally praying with your kids. Where Elijah had to travel 40 days and 40 nights powered off of magic bread so that he could have the strength to get into the presence of God. And for us, so often it just takes putting down our cell phones. It feels like work sometimes to get into the presence of God. And yet sometimes, and I would say most times, that's exactly what we need, even when everything outside of this couch feels exhausting. Come to me, and Elijah says, okay, I'm going to travel 40 days and 40 nights. Why? Because it was easy? No. Because he was tired, because he needed rest, because he needed to go where his soul desired and longed to be. And when he gets to the mountain, he encounters God. And the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? I love it when God asks questions that he already knows the answer to. He's like, hey, what is going on? And Elijah replied, he said, I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. And the Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me. He's like, but God, I've been doing all the things. I've been zealous. I've been getting after it, and they be killing everybody. And now they're after me, and Lord, I am I'm tired. And God responded, verse 11, the Lord said, go outside and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. God sees that Elijah is tired, and rather than rebuking him, God's response is, oh, I see what you need. You need more of me. Go outside because I'm about to walk by. So Elijah does just that. It says, then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. I told Jenny when I first read this and when we were talking afterwards that this might be the most beautiful picture I've ever seen of God. Think about it. There's this wind that is breaking everything, shattering the mountain, and God isn't in it. And then there's this big earth-shaking quake that trembles everything, and God's not in it. And then there's this fire that could probably consume just about everything, but God wasn't in it. Why? Because he couldn't be? No. Acts 2, he was in the wind. Exodus 3, he was in a fire. Acts 16, he was in an earthquake. Like God could be in every single one of these things, except this time he wasn't. No, not that. No, he came in a whisper. No, not just a whisper, actually. He came in a gentle whisper, because a whisper might just be too strong. God knew what Elijah needed. God knows what you needed, and sometimes you don't need to see his power. Sometimes you don't need to see God flex his muscles. Sometimes you just need to be held in his arms, knowing that you won't be crushed. See, this idea of being gentle isn't the absence of strength. It's strength under control. It's saying, listen, I know that you're strong enough, but I also need to feel your love. And God came to Elijah in a whisper. Think about it. Is there a more intimate way for us to communicate than a whisper? You don't whisper to strangers. You don't go up in the grocery store and say, hey, where's the ketchup? You have a beautiful family. Yes, I do, and they're going to stay away from you. You're scary. You don't whisper to strangers, but to people that you're close to, people that you love, some of the best words that you can share are shared in a whisper. Words like, I love you, and I see you. I'm proud of you, and I know you're tired. God came to Elijah in a whisper because that's exactly what Elijah needed. And for some of you, all it takes is sitting down in his presence. I think about some of the hardest things that we have navigated as a family. And the times that I sat down at Jesus' feet, I just remember a specific time where I was so broken, and I sat down and I was like, God, I don't need corrected right now. You know, normally I love it when you rebuke me. I love it when I'm correct. I love that stuff. And right now, I think if you do that, I will break. And I just remember that moment where he just met me there. He said, listen, I'm not here to teach you anything other than the truth that I am just here with you. He comes in a whisper. Jesus continues that very idea in Matthew 11, verse 29, where it's like, hey, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And then he tells us why we go to him. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He says, I'm going to give you a 2-step process in finding the rest solution. And here's what it is. Step 1, come to me. Step 2, put my yoke upon you and learn from me. And that idea of a yoke, if you don't know what it is, it's not a strategy for good omelet making. That's just not what it is. See, Jesus would often speak in the context that the people he was addressing were living within. And so he would use parables that were built around parties because they like to get down a little bit, or because they were fishermen. And so he would talk about fish, or in this instance, he would talk about farming tools. See, a yoke was a tool that would yoke. It would bind 2 oxen together, that when they plowed the field, it was not a load that they carried on their own, but it's something that they could carry forward together. It's a tool to get work done. And we might say, well, that doesn't sound restful. Like that sounds like you're saying that I will find rest, and yet you're giving me a tool where I'm going to be bound to do work. Here's not what Jesus is saying, though. Jesus is saying, hey, listen, we got work to do, so bind yourself to me so that when you get tired, I can drag you through the field. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying, hey, we've got work to do, so when you get tired, I'm going to egg you on to keep going. That's not what he says. No, he says, yoke yourself to me. Why? Because I am gentle and humble in heart. He says, I'll come to you in a whisper. Is there work to be done? Absolutely. You can't look outside right now and not see that there is a lot of work to be done. And yet, Jesus says, as we do the work, we can do it together and you will find the rest that you so desperately need. Are you tired? He whispers, take on my yoke. Pick up my yoke and follow me. I want to be clear. When we're talking about this, we're not talking about physically tired anymore. If you are a parent, we've already addressed it, you're going to be tired. If you are a discipler who is following Jesus, being changed by Jesus, committed to the mission of Jesus, you're going to be tired. If you are a person, a disciple, walking against the current of this world, trying to turn it into something that it was always designed to be, there are going to be times, and probably most of the time, you're going to be tired. The point isn't that you're not going to be physically tired. The point is that your soul is going to get the rest that it desperately needs. He says, are you tired? I've got the solution. I know what you need. Have you ever been in a situation where you've been physically exhausted and spiritually filled up? Like a situation like I just think of times like even like this week where like I just felt like there was so much to do with the baptism and with messages and trying to lead people and discipleship, like just all the things were adding up. And then we had some family stuff going on that we had to navigate too that was incredibly hard. And there's just a lot of pieces that are building and building. And I was like, God, I am so tired. And at the same time, I watched Jesus do things in our church today and over this week that I wasn't sure were even going to happen. And I was like, God, I'm so physically tired, but spiritually I feel filled up. You ever spend an entire day serving somebody and you're like, man, physically? Because these old bones, they don't work like they used to. Like 30 is just not what I thought it was. And so you're like, man, like this is hard, and yet, man, I've been the hands and feet of Jesus all day. Like I am good to go. Like I think of one of the guys who got baptized here is like, man, like I'm serving everywhere. Why? Because is he young? No. Mike, I'm sorry, I called you out. You're not young. But is he ready to go? Is he fired up? So are we meant to be fired up for the Lord and physically tired? Sure, but spiritually filled up? Yes. See, the toughest part, and I think this is where we get caught up, at least I do. The toughest part about putting on Jesus' yoke is taking off your own. See, if I'm yoked alone, I control the direction, I control the pace, I control the destination, I control where I go. Sure, I might even be in the same field as Jesus. Like, I'm good to go. Like, Jesus, I'll do all the Jesus thing. I'll check the ministry boxes, but I want to go my own way and do my own thing. And we can do that. And when you do, you're going to get really tired. Jesus says, do you want rest? Do you want a solution to the tired problem? It's not doing more, and sometimes it's not even doing less. It's about who you are binding yourself to. See, the yoke that I so often tie myself to, the yoke where I'm yoked alone, is the yoke that is strangling me. And some of us, we need a yoke check. Some of us, we need to let go of some of the control that we cling on to and say, Jesus, not Jesus, take the wheel. I think we've got more responsibility than that. But Jesus, like, hey, listen, I'm gonna go where you lead me. And if you say turn left, I'm going to go left. And if you say go right, I'm going to go right. And I'm going to press into who you call me to be. And I'm going to hear your voice wherever I go because you are side by side with me. Are you yoked to Jesus? God shows himself to Elijah in a whisper. And they kind of repeat the conversation that they've already had. Like Elijah's like, I'm so tired, Lord. And God's like, I know, like I'm here, like I've got you. And they do this whole back and forth. And then in 1 Kings 19, verse 15, it continues. It says, the Lord said to him, go back the way you came. And go to the desert of Damascus. And when you get there, anoint Hazael, king of Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel. And anoint Elijah, son of Shaphat, from Abel-Meholah, to succeed you as a prophet. I heard a pastor say Bible college taught him how to pronounce these things. You just say it fast and people assume. I thought that was funny. Jehu will put to death any who escape the sword of Hazael, and Elijah will put to death any who escape the sword of Jehu. Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal, that's the false god, and whose mouths have not kissed him. God says, Elijah, now that you're here, I got to tell you, I've been doing a lot of work. Like, now that you're with me, I got to tell you, like, there's a lot of things that I've been doing in the background that you didn't know about. I've been raising up 2 kings to kind of do some of the fighting for you. I've been raising up another prophet named Elijah. Yeah, it's a little confusing, but we'll figure it out. I've been raising him up so you can do some old school discipleship with him, walk beside him, and equip him to be the prophet that I am creating him to be. Like, I've been doing a lot of work that you didn't even know about. And for some of us, as we are working and pressing in, maybe even getting the rest that we need, and you're like, yeah, but I'm still tired. We just got to realize God is doing so many things that we don't see. How many of us knew that there were going to be 9 baptisms today? Like, how many of us saw all the ways that God had moved in order to shift hearts and prepare people for that step in their faith? There's some people even in this room where you're being stirred up and you're like, man, like I want to make a decision for Jesus, or I want to maybe be a part of the next baptism, or I want to take another step in my faith journey. And that's incredible. That's a celebration that we're meant to have. And most of us don't know all the details of all the things that God is doing to reach you. As you walk down a broken path, as I walk down a broken path, and he says, yeah, you're broken, but I can make you the way you were designed to be. I can turn you into a new creation. I can change everything. But if we are so busy running around, pressing down on the pedal as our Ford Escort whispers, I've had enough, that we can't sit down at his feet, we're not going to get what we need to be the disciples he created us to be. As the worship team comes forward, we're going to have a time of response together. And that response is going to be a chance for us to intentionally look at our lives. And I want you to look at the schedule that you've been setting up in your life. And before you can sit down at his feet, maybe you just need to place your schedule there first. So it's going to be a chance for you to say, Lord, like as we step into the next 3 weeks of this series and you give me practical ways that I can sit down at your feet, before I can do those things, maybe there's room that I need to make for you. And I want you to wrestle today over the things that you are doing and ask him, what are the things that I need to let go of that I can press into who you have created me to be? It's a chance for us together to say, no. I know what the world is doing. I know where the world is headed, but I follow him, which means my schedule, my life, my family, my heart are all his. Let us hurry out of his presence no longer. Jesus, you are good. We see you working in our lives. We see you working in our families as we watch people make the decision to be baptized. We praise you for what you are doing, not just in the person next to me, but the people that you are doing in my heart, that you're doing in our congregation's heart as you change us and mold us into your image. God, we are grateful that you are a God that knows when we need your strength and knows when we need a whisper. God, we are grateful for you. We see you, we love you, and thank you. In your name, amen.